It's going to be hard to really make progress too if you're just sleep deprived in general. What does some of the literature kind of show on that? Like in terms of, I guess let's just take like academics, something that no one cares about. But what does the literature kind of show when people are like sleep deprived and they're trying to take tests and they're trying to get through school and stuff like that?
Oh, look, sleep deprivation is now known as a carcinogen. Okay, so
really?
It's really, really, really bad. Okay, and I always say that even being awake, when you think about the brain, it's like being awake is like low level brain damage because your brain repairs during sleep. So does your body. When it comes to sleep deprivation, there was a study that we need to talk about, and I talk about it so often in every podcast. They took a group of healthy men, healthy individuals. They had no mild cognitive impairment, nothing. And they deprived them of sleep. And this sleep deprivation in this study was 6 hours. You think about that. Like I work with a lot of portfolio managers on Wall Street and they're like, Louisa, I'm only sleeping 4 hours. So they're severely deprived of sleep.
Yeah.
So 6 hours of sleep deprivation for 1 week. That's all. And guess what they found? They found a 3% change in their genome. What does that mean? We'll get a bit further into it. We have around 25,000 genes or 20,000 genes in the human genome. Now, when these subjects were sleep deprived, they saw a dysregulation in 711 genes. So 711 out of 20,000 genes is around 3% change. And what they found was half of the genes that were upregulated and other half were downregulated. The ones that were downregulated were the immunity genes. So the genes responsible for immune function, they were downregulated. So they were switched off, essentially. The ones that were upregulated were the genes responsible for growth of tumor cells.
Damn.
So chronically depriving yourself of sleep is not just interfering with cognitive functions. We know that road accidents are happening due to sleep deprivation, due to reaction time and not even seeing a car when it's coming. So that's one thing.
That's how I got into my ever first car accident. I was like sleep deprived coming back from work. I closed my eyes for a few seconds and the next thing I hit a car. I was like
That
19
is
at
really
the time.
scary.
Yeah.
But see, that's what's happening. And inhibition control, like we can't control that. And your brain goes into damage control mode.
Yeah.
And remember, your brain is not here to survive evolutionarily past the age of 40. So it used to say, okay, we're done with reproduction. We're 40 years old, we're done with it. We don't need to survive after that. So just the fact that we are wanting to survive past 40 and not only that, thrive, it takes a lot of fuel, brain fuel, I call it. And if you're sleep depriving yourself, you're just behind the mark in every way. So you're not just getting behind on these cognitive functions, you're also disrupting your genome. That's scary.
Yeah.
What about THC or wine?
No. Absolutely terrible.
Both?
Yes. So alcohol.
What about both together?
That's what I try and tell my athletes. Like they're like, "Yo, Louisa."
Yes.
They're like,
"How do you deal with that?"
And they're like, "I'm just, I'm doing it to relax." I'm like, "Hey, stop." That's the hardest thing I have, getting my athletes to stop the marijuana. Alcohol, they're like, "No, I don't do that during game season." But they'll have, marijuana, and with alcohol, it turns out that it actually blocks the REM sleep and it blocks deep sleep, especially REM. Like if I have a glass of wine, my REM sleep just plummets to the ground. And that's because ethanol, which is the active ingredient in alcohol, is a sedative. What's a sedative? When you go into surgery, they pump you with propofol, which is a sedative, and it knocks you out. Obviously, that's to a much higher degree. But so if this is a sedative as well, then what is it doing? So it's knocking you out. So you may be thinking, well, I'll have some alcohol and I'll just knock myself out. You're sedating yourself and you're not getting into sleep. And it turns out that no amount of alcohol, which people on Instagram hate me for this, no amount of alcohol is safe for the brain. There's so many studies that show that you can get atrophy of the brain from drinking moderate amounts of alcohol.
Hey, you said it. I'm happy you said it.
Which is moderate amounts is 7 drinks for women and 14 drinks for men.
That's
a
moderate?
week?
A
right?
week.
Oh,
yeah.
shit. Okay, I'm like, oh my God.
But 7 drinks, you can have that all in one go. I've seen some girls can just do 7 shots.
I've
and
seen
I'm
it.
like, That's not me. Like I'm terrible with alcohol. I'm a real cheap date, actually.
So is Nsima.
I'm a lightweight.
I'm a lightweight. I'll have a glass of wine, and I don't really drink. If I do, I'll have a glass of wine. But even that just sends me, So I don't know how some women are putting down 5 drinks or 7 drinks. So you can have those 7 drinks one a night.
Yeah.
And so many women are. And you can have... He's laughing at you.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that drink often.
Okay. Are you one of them? Is that what we're laughing at? Okay.
That's an inside joke.
That's an inside joke. I don't know it. But tell your whoever it is that's drinking that they're wreaking havoc on their sleep patterns. And we also know that just one night of sleep deprivation can build up amyloid. What's amyloid? It's one of the hallmarks of Alzheimer's disease. It's a protein. Once it, clumps together, so it's necessary. It's in our brain.
Yeah.
But if we don't clear it out during the night, which happens during deep sleep through the glymphatic system, then we're just going to get a buildup of amyloid. And that's not good.
Power Project family, how's it going? Now, we talk about sleep all the time on the podcast because it's one of the biggest things that helps you with your health and fitness, your recovery, your muscle gain, your fat loss, everything. That's why we've partnered with 8 Sleep for such a long time now, because the technology behind the mattress allows you to track your heart rate, the amount of times it takes you to fall asleep, your tosses and turns, your heart rate variability. It changes its temperature through the night based off how you sleep, but not only yourself, but maybe your partner on the other side of the bed. It is an amazing mattress. Andrew, how can they learn more?
Yes, head over to 8sleep.com/powerproject. That's 8 spelled out, EIGHT, sleep.com/powerproject. Along with more information, you guys will actually save $150 off of your entire order automatically. Links to them down in the description as well as the podcast show notes.
There are some things I think that would be wise, though, for people to do, for people that are struggling with their sleep. Obviously, using the tape is super easy to do. And I'm encouraged to do it every night because it's simple enough. I did mention every once in a while I won't tape, but for the most part, I'll do it and it stays on. I don't have any problem with it. I don't have to really mess around with it. And then you showed me the other way of putting it on. That was really helpful because it's so sticky. It would like stick to each finger, and I was trying to get it off one finger and trying to get it on the other one. And then when I'm trying to put it on to run, sometimes I'm not smart enough to stop running. So I'm trying to do it while I'm running, and it will kind of stick everywhere. But I do think there's some other things that people can do to help enhance their sleep. And I think it's a good idea just to push your cardiovascular a little bit. So you can do that through lifting weights, and you can do that through many, many different means. But I think people should get their heart rate up a little bit, get the heart rate above 120 and see if you can kind of ride that out, or above 110, whatever feels appropriate for you. And see if you can kind of keep that elevated for a couple of minutes at a time. Maybe at first, maybe you're only able to do that for 2 or 3 minutes at a time. Maybe you can start to incorporate some nasal breathing into your training and just have appropriate rest in between sets that kind of only allows you to nasal breathe during some of your training. And we've talked about it here on the show. We actually feel like that would be a pretty safe way for you to train. It would keep the weights in line. It would keep your sets and reps in line where you wouldn't be redlining. A lot of times
actual governor.
Yeah, a lot of times we're training we're just going so hard. So finding ways to get yourself to breathe hard during the day, I think would be a really excellent way to help you to have the kind of reverse of that when you sleep, and that's to really just calm the hell down.
But I also want to add into there, this is something that takes time. Because when I started nasal breathing with jiu-jitsu, it didn't feel good.
It feels horrible.
It feels horrible. It feels
really, really difficult. I feel like you're going to pass out at times.
It doesn't feel like you can get the amount of air that you typically would if you're going like that, right? So it's going to feel a little bit uncomfortable. But like you're saying, if you can push your nasal breathing capacity during the exercises you do, and this can be some low intensity cardio, this could be you doing a little bit of kettlebell work.
Maybe it's just a walk.
Could you, during a walk, hopefully you're not breathing through your mouth during a walk.
It's not hard for you, but if it is.
I don't think most people realize that, though. I think people are still walking and running, and they're breathing through their mouth, and they don't realize that, oh, shit, I should keep it shut and do my nose.
I think part of the challenge, too, is it's a quantity over quality thing. Because one of the things that Nestor talks about is just because you think you're getting more volume of air into your lungs, you actually get more oxygenation of your blood by breathing through your nose, because of the capillary actions create this nitric oxide reaction that allows the blood to take up the oxygen much more effectively than it does through
even though that might feel better.
Exactly. Right? It might feel better, but it's a quantity over quality thing.
Absolutely. And this is also one thing that Patrick mentioned. Patrick mentioned that like even as he started trying to breathe more through his nose, it took time for that to feel good. It's like if you're someone who perpetually or breathes a lot through your mouth, when you start focusing on breathing through your nose, there's little muscles in here too that probably don't get that much action. So they will develop over time and it'll be much easier to do that. That's why I just want people to understand that this isn't some like, for some people, it's going to be, ooh, this feels great. But for some people, breathing through your nose when you're sleeping or when you're doing a lot of other things may very well be quite uncomfortable. My sister is quite overweight. And right now for her, like I'll see her over at my mom's house. And when she's walking around, her mouth's like this. She doesn't even realize she's breathing through her mouth. And I have to continuously remind her, hey, you know, shut your mouth, right? And if you're someone who's not like, maybe you're not thinking about it or it's not something that's been at top of mind, you could be working at your computer. And I'm sorry I'm rambling, but I'm remembering when I was like 24 or 23, when I was with one of my exes, I was wearing some Beats headphones and I was at the computer and she's like, why are you breathing so loud? And I'm pretty sure my mouth was slightly open when I was doing some work on my computer. So these are things you sometimes don't think about. You don't even realize you're doing. But if you can become more cognizant during your day to just try to keep it here, that'll make it easier at night.
And it's also interesting too, because I think a lot of people, you know, you're right, it might not be comfortable, but it's important to push yourself through those comfort zones. I mean, you know it through training, you know it through, you know, any sort of progress that you ever try to make. If all we do is stay in the thing that we're used to or the things that we're comfortable with, then it's really hard for us to get better or grow or to progress, you know. And so I think that that's an important component.
And it's trying it too, right? This is something that's non-invasive, it's inexpensive, and it's something that everybody can try it. It's not as dangerous as people think. Like the people that, it's amazing. Like we all see the comments of people who are like, they think this is so dangerous.
I have allergies.
Right. And like
You're
they're
gonna
not
kill people.
and they're not going to wake up. Like, well, what if you have a stuffy nose and you just don't wake up? Like you're going to wake up, right? But it's something that's non-invasive. That's easily something you can try just to see how it goes, right? And you preach it all the time about just being able to try things.
Right.
As far as sleep is concerned, do you have any suggestions for people when it does come to that, especially as you get older, since quality sleep is harder with age?
Yeah, it's so important. I mean, when you sleep, your brain is literally like cleaning itself of the proteins that are associated with Alzheimer's disease, like amyloid beta, tau. We know that on one night of shortened sleep, they can measure levels of amyloid in cerebrospinal fluid. They found that on just one night of shortened sleep, there's a 30% increase in amyloid in cerebrospinal fluid and about a 50% increase in tau, which is not necessarily reflective of what you see in brain. But I mean, the assumption is that the more there is in cerebrospinal fluid, the more likely there will be to clump up and aggregate and form these plaques in the brain, right? So you definitely want to make sure that you're optimizing your sleep. And one of the things that I find super fascinating about sleep is that it tends to be front-loaded with the processes that support your immediate survival, right? Like immediately, because like think about like if you were on the run or something, or if like your sleep was disturbed midnight, your body wants to, I think from an evolutionary standpoint, it makes a lot of sense that sleep would be front-loaded with the processes that are going to be the most restorative, right? So we know that when you first go to sleep, that's when you get that initial pulse of testosterone, of growth hormone, right? Which is like super reparative to the body. Similarly to the brain, to the anatomy of the brain, that's when you see this swoosh of cerebrospinal fluid go throughout the brain, cleansing itself basically of these proteins like amyloid beta, thanks to the glymphatic system. And that happens earlier on in the night during slow wave sleep, which tends to be front loaded again towards like biased towards the beginning of sleep. It's like later in sleep when like the more emotional regulatory processes take place, like, you know, you get more REM sleep, which is associated with like better emotional regulation and the like. So yeah, I mean, generally just making sure that I think to optimize sleep, one of the things that I think seems to be, the most salient among, you know, whether it's like the reading I've done or the sleep experts that I've talked to, you just want to make sure that you're, you know, being as consistent as you can with your sleep schedule. I think that's a big one, making sure that you're sleeping in a room that's as dark as possible. We're now seeing evidence to suggest that even low level light exposure at like an intensity of about 5 lux is associated with worse cognitive function the next day. So making sure that your room is as dark as possible.
Yeah.
Cooler temperatures, I think, tend to support better sleep. I sleep with one of those like sleep bed cooling systems.
Yeah, we use 8 Sleep.
Yeah, those are bomb. And yeah, diet. I mean, having a healthy dietary pattern, I think, is associated with better sleep. Making sure that you're. Another thing that's a really big one is building up sleep pressure over the course of the day. That's like a concept where, when you do things that tire out your body, it puts more pressure on the brain to get to sleep at night. Like if you're sedentary all day, there's going to be a lot less of that, so it's going to make insomnia more likely. And I think there was a study that came out recently. Small study, but seemed to suggest that resistance training, really more so than aerobic training, taxes the nervous system in a way that builds sleep pressure more than aerobic training does.
Wow.
Yeah. Resistance train. Another reason to resistance train.
Yeah.
Right. But yeah, sleep is crucially important.
Right before I get to bed, I like almost feel myself getting into bed. I don't know if you guys have any idea what I'm talking about, but it's like almost like a sensor. Like my body just wants to lay down, like really wants to lay down. And the second that I lay down, I usually fall asleep pretty quickly. I sometimes have a hard time like staying asleep. I'll wake up and fidget and move around and stuff. But
interesting.
Other than that, I sleep pretty good. Especially more recently, I've really improved my sleep quite a bit. The mouth tape has helped a lot. I think getting myself to breathe hard, I think, was something that was necessary for me because I think I had sleep apnea previously because I used to be really fat and bloated. I used to be 330 pounds. So
wow.
A lot of weight loss has helped. But I think there is a side of a little cardiovascular, I think, can go a long way. A little bit of that training can help too.
Yeah, for sure. But sleep apnea, yeah, I'm glad that you've got that under control because that could be a risk factor for cognitive.
Is there a connection between that and dementia and Alzheimer's, or not?
There is. Yeah, I don't want to, because I haven't like looked into the literature in a while, but there is a connection. I mean, you want to make sure that you're allowing your body to get into those deeper modes of sleep,
right?
Deeper phases. And I think the issue with sleep apnea is that it basically precludes like those deeper, levels of sleep
where you're repairing and restoring.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's just like my, from what I remember from, whatever it was 2 years ago that I last looked into that literature. But yeah, you want to make sure that you're sleeping well.
And what qualifies as a bad night of sleep? Because like we hear it's like, oh, you should strive for 8 hours, but is like 6 hours okay? Is it like 4 hours the drop off? Like where do you think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's like it's a range. It's generally 7 to 9. I think is like what the American Psychological Association tends to recommend. You need more earlier on in life. People that are like older tend to get by with less sleep. I love having a good 8 or 9 hours. Like I'm a good sleeper. Yeah.
Oh yeah.